It's Tim Sheeser for TechSpot here, and this is the Nokia Lumia 930, the company's flagship device for 2014, succeeding the Lumia 925 from last year. It's of course running Windows Phone, like all Nokia Lumia devices are, Windows Phone 8.1 in this situation, and it's got a 5-inch 1080p AMOLED screen to display that on the front. Internally, this smartphone comes with Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 SoC, packing a 2.3 GHz quad-core CPU. There's also 2 GB of RAM and 32 GB of non-expandable internal memory. On the back of the device, you'll find a 20 megapixel PureView camera with optical image stabilization, and to power this device, you'll find a 2400 mAh non-removable battery. So let's get one thing out of the way to start with. This device is very green. As you can see here, it's a bright green color, as Nokia calls it. There are some more modest color options such as white and black available if you don't want something so bright, but this device will certainly turn heads with its extremely bright back cover. The front panel though is your typical black, and of course most of it is occupied by the 5-inch AMOLED display on the front. Along the bottom you'll also find the capacitive touch buttons, and at the top there is a speaker and front-facing camera, as well as some Nokia branding. The entire glass on the front is actually curved from side to side. This is Gorilla Glass, meaning that it's quite nice to swish your hands across while operating the touchscreen. Your fingers simply glide right off the edge because there's simply no rim around the outside of the device. The profile of the Nokia Lumia 930 is quite compact, at least compared to the Samsung Galaxy S5, which itself is a fairly compact device with a 5.1-inch AMOLED display on the front. The Lumia 930 is just slightly smaller. One thing's for sure though is that Nokia hasn't tried to make the Lumia 930 as slim as possible. It comes in at over 10mm thick at its thickest point, and this squared off edge around the sides here does give it a fairly blocky design that doesn't try and hide the thickness, and it can make it a little bit unergonomic when you try and put it in the palm of your hands. That said though, the edges are made of aluminium, and this is one of the more premium materials that Nokia has used on a smartphone to date. You'll find the power button below the volume rocker and a dedicated camera button on the right hand side, and at the top you'll find a 3.5mm headphone jack, as well as the nano SIM port. Make sure you do get a nano SIM for your Nokia Lumia 930 because, as you can see there, it does require one in this port. There is no micro SD card slot, meaning that this nano SIM is the only port found on the device. It also means you can't expand on the storage, just 32 GB, which should be plenty, but it's disappointing to see a regression from some of Nokia's previous designs, which have included the micro SD card slot. Thanks to its solid construction and its stylings that fit with the Windows Phone OS, this is one of the better designs that Nokia has gone for. I was also quite impressed with the display that Nokia has gone with for the Lumia 930. It does use a pentile subpixel matrix, but I don't think you'll be able to notice because the 1080p resolution that it packs is simply fantastic for viewing text and also photos. As you'll notice here, even though Windows Phone doesn't use thin fonts, text still looks fantastic on the Lumia 930's display, and because it's an AMOLED you get deep blacks, and this fits extremely well with the Windows Phone OS, where by default a lot of the backgrounds in applications are deep black, and this means that you get fantastic contrast between areas of text and the background. Another thing that impressed me about the Lumia 930's display is its color quality. It's quite accurate for an AMOLED panel without getting into the oversaturation that you typically find from, say, a Samsung Galaxy S5. But if you do want saturation, you have that feature in the settings. If we dive down here into Nokia's custom display feature down here, select on color profile, you can actually fully adjust the way that your display looks by changing some of these sliders. And if you look at those photos at the top there, as I change the saturation, it changes how the colors look. You can also change the tint, making it either slightly more warm or slightly more neutral or even cool, depending on how you like your display. I typically leave it on standard mode though, because I think it gives the most accurate color representation on this display. You've seen me browse around the operating system a little bit already in this review, and I'm not going to dive too deep into performance because generally from a Snapdragon 800 you'll find very good performance, and if you go and look at the benchmarks in the full review, you'll find that it does compete well with some of the top end smartphones. One area that still continues to let it down is Internet Explorer 11. This is the default browser included on Windows Phone 8.1. Of course you can't install Chrome because it's not supported on this particular OS. It does let it down in some rendering benchmarks and in general use as well a little bit, but everything else from this operating system is very smooth. The performance is great because Windows Phone is so optimized. You can of course swipe through and you get all these fantastic animations, and thanks to that 2GB of RAM you can flick back to some of the applications you're using previously, and there is no pesky loading screen to deal with there. So of course, performance from a flagship device is as good as you'd expect. Another thing that needs to be discussed, of course, is Windows Phone 8.1. This is my first time using Microsoft's updated OS since it was launched in April. The last time I used Windows Phone was probably the Lumia 525 earlier this year. One of the most notable features in Windows Phone 8.1, as you might have already noticed on the start screen here, are start screen backgrounds. You can select any photo that you like to fill up the tiles on the start screen. For example, if we duck in here and choose a new start screen background such as this one, you notice here that if we duck back to the home screen, that it does fill up those tiles with the new photo that you've selected. Another feature, new to Windows Phone 8.1 that's been hunted down from the most wanted list is the Action Center. Similar to the notification pane in Android, you simply pull down from the top of the display to open the Action Center. And here there's a section for notifications. Normally what you'll find is that toast notifications will pile up in here from each of your applications, allowing you to easily see what's been going on. Such as if you get a message, you'll not only see a number appear on the tile, such as you'll see over here, you'll pull it down and then also be a notification giving you a quick snippet of the information. Also at the top here, you'll find some quick toggles such as things for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and airplane mode. You can change these in the settings, but I find the default ones to be perfectly fine. Simply click on them, it's a quick toggle, it works perfectly, and very similar to Android again. Another feature that I would like to talk about in Windows Phone 8.1 is Cortana, which is their new personal voice assistant that I hear is quite competent. And this replaces the standard voice commands thing that you open up by holding down on the search button. Unfortunately though, the Lumia 930 isn't running Windows Phone 8.1 Update 1 just yet, which brings Cortana to more locations such as Australia, which is where I've sourced this device from. Yes, you can get Update 1 through Microsoft's Developer Preview program, but as it isn't an official release on the Lumia 930 just yet, I haven't used it for this review. The final area of the Lumia 930 that I want to talk about is of course the camera on the back. It's a 20 megapixel sensor with Zeiss f2.4 optics and optical image stabilization. Going through some of the sample photos you'll see on the screen here, the color quality is very good from this sensor and it's typically quite capable in most situations. Although the Lumia 930 takes photos that are quite soft, definitely not as sharp as the Samsung Galaxy S5, the ability to shoot in RAW allows you to adjust these photos after the fact. Also, optical image stabilization does allow you to get some half-decent shots in low light. I wouldn't say it's as good as the Lumia 925 or the HTC One M8 because the pixel size has been reduced from some of Nokia's previous smartphones, but it does tend to hold its own against devices like the LG G3 and it definitely beats others like the Galaxy S5. Generally speaking, the way it produces balanced and accurate shots in most conditions makes this one of the most capable smartphone cameras going around. I don't think it'll disappoint too many people, especially with some of the manual features that you get in the Nokia camera application. Just be wary of some dodgy metering in the camera application. You might have to select manual white balance for some situations because it doesn't meter quite as well as you'd expect from a flagship smartphone. At the end of the day, the Nokia Lumia 930 is the best Windows phone so far. It has an attractive design that fits well with the Windows Phone OS that it runs. It has a very capable rear camera and speedy performance from the Snapdragon 800 inside, and that display on the front is also quite impressive. Windows Phone has received some updates since I last used it, making it worth considering over some of the other smartphone platforms. That said, applications is still an area that I think Microsoft needs to work on, with app quality not being as good as you'll find on either Android or iOS. So this is definitely something to consider if you're thinking about switching to Windows Phone and picking up the Lumia 930 in the process. I'm not sure whether the fairly standard hardware offering or the updates to Windows Phone 8.1 will entice people to switch from something like Android or iOS, but if you are after a Windows phone, this is definitely the best you can get. And that brings me to the end of this review of the Nokia Lumia 930. We do have a full written review up and available on TechSpot.com. Check that out for things such as battery and performance benchmarks, as well as more camera samples. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more video reviews coming in the future. Follow us on all our social media accounts, including Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. Like this video if you did enjoy it, and this has been a TechSpot video review.